So I heard you say before that these races are 70% mental, 30% physical. Do you still believe that?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Like, I mean, it originates in your mind, and like so much of it is like regaining the confidence and like the mental aspect, because just as your physical body can atrophy, like your mind can also atrophy. You have to construct your mind to being able to do these things as much as your body. There's a million reasons you could come up with where you could say, okay, I'm done. Like, you can always find a reason to quit, and you have to find your why of why you won't do that. I'm not going to ever quit a race. If I have to be the last person, I'll be the last person. I would rather finish last in a race than to quit the race because I'm not going to be in the top 3 or the top 10 or whatever that might be.
Before we dive into today's episode, I want to thank you for tuning in and supporting the brand. Now, I have spent the last decade plus of my life building Bear Performance Nutrition, and we create effective supplements that you can trust to support your wellness, endurance, and performance goals. We offer high quality, great tasting whey protein powders, effective pre-workouts, superfoods, sleep support, electrolytes, and much more. So if you want to support the content that we produce and the message that I am sharing through my content and on this podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you went to bpnsupps.com and you can use code NickBear10 to save 10% off your next order. So thank you guys. I appreciate you. And let's dive into the show. Today on the podcast, we have Harvey Lewis, 27-year veteran of ultra running, recently set the backyard world record of 450 miles. Ohio school teacher, has been run commuting to and from work for the last 10 and a half years and currently training for the Barkley Marathons. Harvey, what's going on?
Hey, thanks so much. It's so cool to be down here and start of our vacation actually from teaching. So this is a great way to kick off the winter holiday.
Oh, beautiful. How long is the winter vacation?
We have about 2 weeks over the Christmas break. Yeah. So, and Nashville is just a city I don't get down. I get down here maybe every year or two, and it's a fun environment. I mean, it's only a 4-hour drive from Cincinnati, but it feels like a different world.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And Pennsylvania being close to Ohio, very similar feels. Nashville has a completely different feel, vibe, environment compared to the North.
Yeah, it does. And today, I mean, we went out for a morning run, and my buddy Greg, who's a local, Greg Armstrong, and it was great to see. Like, there's a lot of people out and about. It's a little warmer in Cincinnati, even, believe it or not, even though we're not that far apart.
So it's actually a big running community.
It seems like it.
And I was surprised by that coming from Austin, because Austin has a great running community as well.
It does, yeah.
And getting here, there's run clubs everywhere, and there's people running every single morning.
I loved it, yeah.
Which has been great to see.
I love that.
Well, I want to kick off. I want to just congratulate you and acknowledge the big win at Big's backyard. You got to be absolutely psyched about 4.5 days of running 450 miles and setting the bar pretty high for everyone, including yourself.
Thanks. It was definitely something that I just I'm just so like ecstatic about it. But to throw it back to you, congratulations for your marathon.
Thank you.
I think that's just a really remarkable. And like for me, my personal best in the marathon is like 2:45:58, and like I kind of always have this mindset that it's always possible to improve and better yourself. So I'm like, I may have to ask you a few questions today about like, what do you think brought you to that? So it's really neat to see that you got under the 240 mark.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, when I finished the race, because I was shooting for sub 245 originally, and when I finished the race, and we created a video out of it. We haven't released it yet, but the guys are editing the project right now. And Ian came over to me, he had a camera in my face, and all I could say like over and over again was, I'm just so proud of that one. I'm just so proud of that one. You know, like when you put in all this work and you execute and you're like, yes, like we did it.
That's amazing.
It's such a good feeling.
How many months did you really concentrate? Like, where did you get that vision or goal? And how many months did you have to really work to get to that place once you set that in your mind?
Well, I've been running consistently since 2018. I've trained for marathons and ultras and triathlons. And I ran a 2:48 marathon at Buffalo 2 years ago. So I knew 2:45 was doable. And then before this marathon prep, this prep was only about 12 to 13 weeks. Wow. But before that, I was in a prep for the Last Man Standing out in Pineland Farms, Maine. So I had a good base going into this marathon prep.
Yeah.
But it goes back to what you said. Like, I think I've realized over these years that you can keep improving in all these different areas and aspects of your life, running specifically.
Yeah.
I was just talking to someone this morning, and they were collegiate athletes, and they were training for their first marathon. And they were talking about how humbling the experience was coming from being this, D1 college star and now training for their first marathon. And it was so challenging and difficult. And I was telling them, running is that one thing that doesn't matter where you're coming from or where you get started, you can keep making progress.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great segue into what I wanted to talk about right away was your marathon journey.
Oh, yeah.
I read that it took you 5 years to break 5 hours in the marathon. And I think you finally went sub 5 hours in 1995 at the Cleveland Revco Marathon.
Yeah. So it started off in, my first one was in 91. And at that point, I'd only run like up to 8 miles. Like I was on the track team, but I never scored my whole high school, middle school experience. I was usually towards the back of the group. And I came up with this idea I wanted to do the marathon sort of on a whim. I told my mom with like 10 days ago, and fortunately she just said, oh, okay. She was a nurse and worked the weekend. So she actually just dropped me off at the train. We had like a train that went from like our town in Berea down to Cleveland. And so from that, it took me 5 years to get under the break 5 hours. And you get to certain plateaus where you think you don't really know that you can go further than that. Just kind of wild. And it took me another, I think I did the sub 3 in 2000 and I want to say like 2009 maybe. So that took me 14 years. And so to go from breaking 5 years to break 5 hours. But then after that, it took me another 13 or 14 years to get under 3 hours.
That's wild.
So that's so crazy. It doesn't seem like right. Yeah, something, it doesn't seem possible that you can take so long. I guess I was just slow. It took the ultra road to getting to that point.
Well, it's just like this incremental progress.
Incremental progress. Yeah, nothing. And I actually, in that period, I also had my son when I was very young, and I went back to school and did my master's in teaching. And when I was working on my master's in teaching, there was a period where I still ran, but I was running like maybe 3 days a week. And I went from running like a 3:19 marathon to getting back to like a 3:50 or 4 hour or somewhere like that. And then I went back again. So it's interesting. It wasn't like a linear approach. I was always getting faster. There were times where I got slower before I got faster again.
I think that's all of that is very relatable to a lot of people. Because I'm sure people who just come across you and they look at your most recent accomplishments in the last 5-10 years, they're like, oh, this guy's he was born to be a runner.
Right.
And you go back a few more years and a few more years and a few more years, and it's like, oh, if this guy is doing it, I can also do it as well. So it's encouraging for a lot of people. But I think another part of that relatability, like you just said, you had these transitions in life where life got crazier and your performance decreased. That's natural for a lot of people.
Yeah.
where there's chapters and seasons where you can go really hard towards certain goals. And there's times where you have to kind of let off the gas a little bit, but you can later, when you have the time and opportunity, press back on the gas. I think a lot of people need to hear that and understand that, because oftentimes, and I fall victim to this as well, when you have to let off the gas because of other responsibilities and obligations, there's this heavy sense of guilt that comes with it.
Yeah. We could totally beat ourselves up. And then I guess it's like Greg and I, in fact, we're talking about this morning on the trail, and just what it is that motivates us. And like, I always, when I had those only 3 days a week running, and I backed off running, I just enjoyed that for like my mental like side of it. Just like getting outdoors, it like was important for my mental health, and like having the 3 days, like the roots of what my passion of running is, like just that experience of like just moving your body and like getting your heart rate elevated and being outdoors, and just like it feels like a cleansing experience. Like it's like meditation for me. It's like I feel like it just a total different person if I'm not able to do any type of running. I think it's difficult to like have that. But yes, there is absolutely that the waves. So it makes where we are now, where I went with Biggs, all the more sweeter, because I didn't always experience success. I lost so many races, or things that I had like a vision to do didn't exactly materialize, and it just kept on getting up and going again. The whole go one more.
Yeah. I'm curious, talking about all of that, how you navigated that. I'm curious, me personally, but I'm sure a lot of other people are also listening to this curious as well, in terms of, you start training, you start running, you make this progress. And I think you can apply this to anything in life, not just running, but you start making incremental progress towards something, and then you get thrown this curveball, and you can't maintain that progress because your responsibilities shift towards something else.
Yeah.
When it's time to step on the gas again, how did you navigate decreased performance and then moving back into improved performance? And now, here you are decades later at the peak of your performance. Like, how did you navigate that? Was there struggle? Were there lows? Was it all highs?
I think one thing about me that's different than a lot of runners, especially, are performing at really high levels, is I also didn't have like that collegiate experience like of running. You didn't have that either.
No.
But I also, when I was in high school, I wasn't like a top performing runner. I mean, I was more in the back of the group. And so my expectations were, as much as I really wanted to like always do my best, and I didn't have like this idea that I had to always win every race, so it, if I think about that period where I was running like a 350 marathon, I also didn't think it was at that moment in time, I really didn't think it was possible that I didn't see myself as a sub 3 hour marathoner. And that's one of the things I think I've learned the most across this whole time, is how we see ourselves. Because if we see ourselves in certain ways, sometimes that impacts the way we actually act and what we go after. And if with where I saw myself, that was like it was nothing that happened overnight, but it was like incremental things that occurred to me. Like going, for example, to India and following Gandhi's Salt March. Like it was like a journey, 241 miles by myself, predominantly. And I just had to like overcome hardship by like running in like this hot, humid weather in like this incredible smog. But I just encountered these amazing people. And there were many times I wanted to quit, but surviving that journey was like in 2007, was another like thing that made me stronger. But there were things like that occurred along the map. Every couple years, I would seek out adventures, and those adventures hardened me, and like also I learned a lot, and it just grew. But it was never anything that was like overnight. Like it was a long journey coming.
Yeah. Could you feel and experience yourself evolving and changing and growing over these last, couple of years? I say years being many years through running. And has running helped you view yourself in a different way?
Yeah, without a doubt. Like running is, it is more than just a physical aspect. It's like such a mental aspect to it as well. Just putting yourself into uncomfortable positions that may seem really uncomfortable, but then it's like being in a yoga move where you're trying to breathe through being in an uncomfortable position. So the running was a vehicle to train not only my physical self but my mental self, and learning to push through like fatigue or whatever the hardship is or challenge might be. Like running has been like a incredible force for informing me and educating me on like what is humanly possible. So, I mean, I still feel like there's so much to learn, and I still like, I feel like, I don't know everything by any extreme, and I love seeking out and like learning from others still. Mm-hmm. And that has been a really important part of like the whole journey as well. Like just learning from others in the community. So, yeah.
Have you ever had to take off significant amount of time from running?
I have been very fortunate that I have not. Like the most was when I broke my neck actually in 2004. I had this really devastating car wreck. It happened to be on the 4th of July. A car spun off in front of me, and I went off the car or the road to avoid hitting them. My car like rolled over like 3 times, and I got out of the vehicle, and I felt like just, it was like the most priceless experience, because when you think you're going to die and then you survive it, it just is like, you just can't think anything, be more thankful than that.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. And so there was about, they ended up doing surgery on me, and I had my 4th and 5th vertebrae fused with some titanium, and I had an extra bone added into my neck. So for like 2 months, I had this neck brace on.
Dang.
Yeah, it was wild. I couldn't drive. I actually started walking back and forth to work. It's just my routine. Like, so I still, and what I found also with that experience was movement is like critical. So, I mean, if you think about like what percentage of Americans unfortunately get no exercise whatsoever, it's like, maybe the CDC says like a quarter of Americans, maybe it's like 60% don't get like very much. That's like, my body was aching when I wasn't moving. But when I started walking, like my body like loosened up, and that was an incredible, like I didn't feel pain. Like I didn't take any painkillers once I left the hospital. And it was the walking, like just walking was like medicine. But it's that for 2 months I didn't run. And then I had like, I like actually went out and I did the Columbus Marathon like 3 months after the accident. And at that moment, I actually finished in like 4 hours and like 30 some minutes. So like that was my slowest marathon I'd had, other than pacing one. And so it was another time where things went the other direction. And it took me a whole year to get back to running like under like maybe a 3:15 marathon. It took me a whole year to get to that. And then I just went for another different style of adventure. So I did a couple Ironman races, which were also very interesting. Like, cause I wasn't a swimmer. I was like, the first triathlon I did, like a half Ironman, I was like the second to last person out of the water, like swimming portion.
Do you enjoy the swim?
I love the swim. I'm still not like, I might finish maybe in like the middle part if I were to, or a little bit behind the middle if I were to do a triathlon, but I love the swimming.
I don't enjoy the swim.
Yeah, no. I like exploring things and trying to learn new ways and growing in those areas. And like, even though I'm not a great swimmer, I'll incorporate that into my regimen for like September, August, and also May when we have an outdoor pool in Cincinnati I can use. And so for about 3 months I wasn't running. But other than that, I've been running like the last 11 years. I've run every day except for like 8.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Like it's definitely part of my like existence for sure.
I know we'll get into it, but I heard you mention that the day after you finished the 450-mile Big's Backyard Ultra, you went out and ran a mile the next day.
Oh yeah,
to continue your streak.
Yeah, actually, I ran a mile. Like I didn't get back to Cincinnati till like right before midnight, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So I ran a mile then, and then the next morning I got up and then we ran to my buddy who crewed for me, Judd Poindexter. We ran to school. So we ran into school, which was a lot of fun because then my students are all like, now, Mr. Lewis, you won this damn race. Now you ran all the way back to school again. We weren't expecting to see you back this week.
That's wild.
But that was fun because that was like a learning opportunity, like show them that like, just, show up, like be there. Don't have like a excuse not to come.
It's a great standard to hold and a great role model to be for these kids. You mentioned, this is a side note really quick, but you mentioned just like the power of movement and healing for performance, recovery, longevity. I was recently watching, I don't know if you saw it on Netflix. It's this new docuseries called Live to 100.
Yeah.
And it's all about the blue zones.
Yes, 100%. I love it.
It's amazing.
I love it.
And it explores all these different cultures and countries and geographic locations where people are outliving everyone else. And one of the common denominators outside of diet and what they are eating is just continuous movement throughout their lifetime.
Yeah.
And you look at people who are in their late 80s, 90s, even hundreds, who have a garden, who are outside working in their garden or working with animals on a farm or a ranch.
Right.
And just continuing to move just improves our longevity and our health at such a significant meter that it is so vital and important. I think, the younger you implement some of these routines and practices and behaviors, and you make them a part of your life, you do them up until the day that you die, it's just going to improve every part of your mental, physical, and emotional health.
Most definitely. I mean, can you imagine like even society, like if you look at the greater society out here and so many challenges would be like the mental health of people, like, I mean, amongst our population. Yeah. And that's where I really like to get kids involved. And like I teach in an art school, so we don't really have a lot of sports. We have like basketball and cheering and we got some things, but I always, even though I teach financial literacy and government, every Tuesday we have a Tuesday health tip that we start class with, like just 5 minutes. But the movement is something I really try to like encourage students with, like doing whatever that might be. Like there's so many things you can get involved with. But what kind of impact would that have on our country if we had like, we got that number of people that are doing nothing like decreased by 50%. We got that many more people active out here doing things. I mean, that would, imagine the impact on like the healthcare costs. I mean, as well.
Well, that's why I asked you about how long, if you've ever had to take time off from running, because where I was trying to get to, and I'm very curious, how did that time off from running influence or affect your mental health, your mind, just the way you felt? Because for me with running, yes, it is a performance metric, and it's a way that I like to exercise and just move my body. But I need it now for the mental clarity that I get. It's almost like a drug. If I don't get it, I'm not the same person. I don't feel the same way. How did you feel in those 2 to 3 months where you couldn't move and you were in this brace? How did that affect you?
Yeah, that was a real special time because that was like a soul searching time. Because I really felt like that while there was probabilities on my side, I still had like a 5% chance I could have died or end up paralyzed. So that time I was just so overtaken by like the gratitude of being alive that didn't really impact me because I was just grateful to have movement. So the fact that there was the overnight after the accident where I laid in bed and I was just so thirsty because you can't even have anything to drink because they're going to do surgery the next day. Mm-hmm. And I just thought like I would just be so grateful if I can just walk. So the walking, even though I wasn't running, to me was like, I felt like that was worth millions to me. Like just to be able to walk because there was a chance I wasn't even going to have that. So then I was like, oh yeah, I mean the running thing, I'm sure I would have loved once I started running, I was like, oh, this is amazing. But the walking was like amazing to me too, because I was like, there was no guarantee that was going to be there. So just to be able to walk, and then I had a commitment and a discipline and dedication that I was going to overcome that, and it was going to be. I saw like I didn't see where I was at that moment. I knew that I was going to go further with that, and I would get back to where I believed I could get back to where I was. I had no idea that I would go another 30 minutes off my best marathon time at that point. But see, actually having that accident with breaking my neck really informed my journey, and it made me be able to do the things I did afterwards in some respects, because I learned a lot from that experience of the mind, and it also rekindled my passion to not want to not take for granted the opportunities to run and go after things that we love.
It actually makes a whole lot of sense based off of, we just met, but like your personality and the presence that you have online and in other interviews that I've listened to, the way that you described the way you were feeling during those 2 to 3 months of not being able to run, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you always view life as your cup half filled and not half empty. And it is not this scarcity mindset of what I don't have, but it's this abundance mindset of what I still have, and the gratitude shown towards that. And I think it's really hard for a lot of people. It's hard for me at times, and I struggle with, and I have to have honest conversations with myself of, hey, Nick, like, yeah, this didn't work out, or you didn't achieve or accomplish this, but look what you have. Like, being so grateful for what you have. Have you always been that way, or was there something that happened that taught you that?
Yeah, I definitely was not always that way. I don't think I was always that way. I mean, I think about my parents for sure. And my dad and my parents got divorced when I was like 5, but my mom. I lived with my mom in a very working class area, Berea. And I never felt like without. Like, so, I mean, we may have had like somewhat humble things on my mom, where I was living with my mom, but I just was. So I that's a very difficult question for me to answer. I can remember, I think certainly with like my experiences also traveling abroad, that sort of started when I was 18. I just, on a whim, decided to go to Belize after graduating high school. And like, for me, I had never really been out of the country, and I just went by myself. So I did that journey. And then later on, when I was like 22, I went through like 17 countries of South and Central America, just like traveling really like on a shoestring budget, like taking the public transportation. And I feel like when I got out, I mean, you can see in our own country, like when you see like poverty and things that people are experiencing, but traveling overseas also made me feel a great sense of gratitude for what we have. And I mean, I've seen it like in Alabama when I was doing like the Selma Civil Rights March. And actually, we got a group of people together, including my friend Greg, and we ran the 54 miles retracing the Selma March. It was amazing. But along that journey, we saw people living in really, difficult like housing without windows even in places. And when I see that, or I'm like in Haiti with my friend who's Haitian, David, and I see like people picking up scraps in a junkyard, and are just like, that's what they're living off of, which is like less than $1 a day. Then like I cannot do anything but feel like just gratitude for what we have in this country and what I have been given. So I think those are things that have kind of informed my journey more, is like getting the exposure to people that are living in these difficult circumstances in different places. So when I go and do an ultra, I'm like, well, the ultra is like really challenging and exciting, but I mean, anytime at any of these ultras, except for maybe Barkley, I have to find my way back to the starting point, but I can easily just say, okay, I can like just, check out, say, okay, I'm tapped out, I'm done. But like someone like these people I'm seeing like in a place like Haiti that, they're living in such really extreme difficulty. Like they cannot just say, okay, I'm tapped out. Now I'm like, I'm every day someone walking to get water. Like, I mean, imagine that. Just, you gotta go walk miles to get water for your family. And then that's just the basic things that we have in this country. We just turn on the faucet and you got the water instantly.
Right.
It's like, yeah. So I think those experiences made me feel very grateful for just everything.
Well, it seems like there's just so much perspective from the experiences you've had, all the countries you've been to, all the people you've met, seeing the highest of highs and others and the lowest and lows. I'm sure that just creates this very well respected and understood perspective. And, it has me thinking about a lot of things right now, but I'm curious, I'm wondering your thoughts on this because, you're a teacher and you're influencing young minds and younger people. Like, are people limiting their experiences and perspectives because we have so much accessibility in the power of our hands where we don't have to go out and see things anymore because we can see it on a screen? And does that exposure facilitate a detachment to the hardships of the world? The whole concept behind ignorance is bliss. And if you don't see it, if you don't feel it, if you don't experience it, you can't really have that perspective of what is happening. So you can't appreciate what you do have. How do you kind of navigate that as a teacher with these younger people, younger minds, and shaping them? I'm curious that because, we were just in New York City this past week, like I was telling you. And me and my wife were walking around and, coming from Nashville, you walk around Nashville, you see the same type of people walking around. You go to New York City, it's this melting pot of different cultures and people and languages. And it's so amazing and beautiful to experience. You see everyone just living their life in their bubble and practicing their culture. And it's respected and appreciated by all these different people. And I told Steph, I hope that one day our kids move away from us and they live in a city, or they live in a different country, or they go from country to country to country and just experience the world. So they come back and have this perspective that they can truly appreciate. And that's my hope for our kids as they get older. Teaching these younger kids, is that on your mind a lot?
Yeah, it is. It is on my mind. And like, I fortunately, one thing that I'm so grateful about is teaching at the School for Creative and Performing Arts. So we're like, this is our 50th year as a school. It's a public K through 12 art school in Cincinnati, and it is a very diverse student population. So we have kids of every different race. We have different religions. We have students like of different income levels. So in a way, we're kind of like in a bubble because we have a diverse school, but it's not always that way. You know, you have a lot of schools. I taught at another school my first 5 years, which was very de facto segregated, not where, you know, we had like maybe 2 or 3% of the population was white, and the rest was African American or multiracial. And so it was like the other end. But I feel like in our country also, we're kind of in a little bit of a crisis with in terms of like this polarization of people and villainizing like people for, you know, being conservative or liberal. You know, it's like, running is the best thing in the world because we're running with people we don't think, oh, are you Republican, Democrat, Green Party, Libertarian, whatever you want to call it. But I feel like, yeah, with education, it would be so powerful for kids to get exposure to like kids in different places. We have volunteer projects. So that's my only quick answer to you. Like I have my students do volunteer projects, and they have to do a certain number of hours and every quarter. And that's I feel like that's one way to like try to build some empathy and like getting out there and doing something in a nonprofit. And but it's not, I'm not hitting the highest mark. Like I would love to get our kids together with kids in, you know, other countries more frequently. My buddy Greg Armstrong, I think he does a much stronger job of that. He teaches on private school here in locally in Nashville, and he takes kids every 3 months to do a well project in a developing country. So like they're going to Nicaragua in March, and then they're going to go to Tanzania.
How old are these students?
These are like high school kids.
Okay.
So like usually like 15, 16, 17-year-olds. I think occasionally you might get a 14-year-old or so he has kids that come back that they go to this. But I mean, what a rewarding experience. I mean, to actually go and, you know, do that. We went to Haiti together and took kids to Haiti. And that was that was an incredibly enriching experience. And it was like kids had more empathy leaving that experience, and as well as more drive in their own personal life experience. Like after seeing like what the living reality, it just was. I think it was really transformative for a lot of these kids. So I mean, that's not something everyone can do. Not everyone can just go and, you know, take off to, you know, do that sort of thing necessarily. But I really feel like, you know, even like volunteering in your own community is something powerful. You know, like that brings usually more to you than even to the group that you're aiming to help.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's easy today to lose that feeling of empathy. One of the things we talk about all the time with, you know, me, Jordan, Ian, is it's really easy to live in these bubbles and not leave those bubbles. And that bubble creates this echo chamber. So you become very consumed with your life and the few people who are very close to you. And these small problems that arise feel like they are earth shattering and that everyone should hear and listen to these problems, when in reality, from perspective, what's hard for you relatively compared to hard for other people in different parts of the world it's minuscule. It's nothing. So I think getting out of these echo chambers that we sometimes can put ourselves in can help influence our ability to just live with empathy. And I found as a leader of a business and being a leader in my family and trying to be a better friend and father and faithful servant, being empathetic, if you're not naturally born with that characteristic, being empathetic is so important. It's so important. And it's something that I'm constantly trying to work on and have more empathy with people around me and people struggling with something else. But if we stay in this echo chamber, it's really easy to neglect that muscle that's being trained, and it atrophies and it dies.
When you were in South Korea, did you have any exposure with North Koreans, like that anyone that you come across at all?
I was 13 miles from the DMZ.
Yeah.
I was stationed at Camp Casey in South Korea. So we really, there was no integration or exposure to anyone in North Korea. But that time in South Korea for me, I was there for 9 months. It was actually amazing and a great experience because, we were there on a training rotation. So essentially we were doing our same job in South Korea that we would have been doing in the States. But we were essentially a QRF, a quick reaction force, in the event that North Korea pushed south into South Korea. And our base was right there, which we essentially would have been a speed bump for North Korean forces. So we were there kind of on a QRF mission. But on the weekends, we were able to travel into the city. I would go into Seoul. I would hop on the train. We obviously had restrictions on how far and where we could go, but we were able to go explore and travel. And I did. I took full advantage of that.
Yeah.
Couldn't leave the peninsula, but I would go into the city. I would go into, like I said, Seoul, but then also smaller villages, and just having exposure and experiencing that culture and the way they lived and ate and the things that they practiced was very fulfilling and very enriching for me. It was also very humbling, especially when you go into these smaller villages where, people are living on farms. They're growing their own food. It's very widely spread out. There's poverty there, far from the city. You go there, you see that, and you leave feeling very grateful for what you do have. Even going back to my barracks room, I'm like, wow, I have this beautiful barracks room compared to what you see when you're out in the farmland of Korea. So that was a great experience for me. I loved that. I want to travel more.
Yeah.
I want to take my wife and my family as they get older, because I think that experience just breeds such great perspective and lessons in life.
Yeah, definitely. And you had some good kimchi? To
be honest,
kimchi? No?
I hated kimchi when I was in Korea.
Right.
Get back from Korea, fall in love with kimchi.
That is awesome.
I think mainly because when I got back from Korea, I found out how good kimchi is for the gut.
Yeah.
So for me with food, if I know something has positive benefits for my body, I can learn to enjoy the taste of the food because of what it's going to do for me.
That's fascinating.
That nourishment.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
So my taste buds and my palate evolves based off of what how it can fuel me.
That's a powerful statement. The last two you just said there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. It's
yeah, I love the
crazy.
kimchi. But my partner Kelly, she actually says I have to eat it outside. She does not like the smell of the kimchi.
Well, if you eat too much kimchi, you will sweat it through your pores as well.
I believe it.
It's wild. So going back to you being a school teacher, and then I do want to dive into some of these races, these massive efforts, but you've been running to and from work for the last 10 and a half years. Tell me how that started, why you do it. Is it of convenience for your training, or where did that start?
Well, it really started all the way back in 1996. And I was working in this small like manufacturing facility, and I would rely on my dad for driving me to work because my wife and I, my son's mother at the time, we only had one car. So I was still a young man. I was like 20, and my father would lecture me about getting on time. So one day we just had like a little like squabble about it, and I got tired of being lectured. So I said, I'm just gonna run to work. Don't worry about it. So back then I started running to work, and then I would, as a necessity, I would actually like run to the campus of University of Minnesota, and then my son's mother would like pick me up, or we would actually rotate. Like she would like come to do classes like later part of the day. And we would do like a rotation with the vehicle. And I also worked in a catering on the weekends. And so I would do these catering gigs with Atrium Catering in Minneapolis. And I remember sometimes I would finish this catering event and like I was wearing, a really formal outfit, and it would be on Minneapolis on the south side. Maybe it was a wedding that I was catering in January or February. And it would be midnight, and I would like take my clothes, like change clothes, throw that in a backpack, and I'd run back to St. Paul. So it was like 10 miles. And I was way back in the day. And so it really started there. And then I sold cars for a little while after that period of time. And I was joking, I was like the only car salesperson in America, didn't have a car. I'd run back and forth to work. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. My coworkers didn't mind. And then I went to teaching, and it would be occasionally like at first I would do it maybe once or twice a month. Like when I was teaching, I really just didn't have that as my routine. And then somewhere along the line, we were doing this sort of project with government class, and we were all saying, okay, it was something we could do to try to lessen pollution. And I said, okay, well, everyone in the class was committing to one thing. It could be something small or whatever you want to do. So I said, okay, I'm just gonna like run to work for a month. And then I did that, and I was like, oh my God, I love this. This is actually like great. Like, why didn't I just think of this? I was too worried about it being like inconvenient, or maybe I was gonna smell, or some little tiny thing like that, which was totally not even like an issue whatsoever. And I just felt wonderful doing it. It was a nice way to get the morning started, like kind of doing a warm up. It invigorates you. You get to school, instead of me feeling like dragging, I actually felt more energy.
And how far were you living at that time from the school?
It was 3 miles one way. So that was like the lowest. A lot of times I would add on like, depending on what I was training for, like I might add on like 5 or 8 miles like in the afternoon or on the way to work. And yeah, so then after that month, I just like kept going, and then I made it like 6 months and a year. And I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to keep on doing this, because I also found a positive impact on my performances as well. Being very consistent with that, it helped me. I think I ended up, I won Badwater like the next year. And like, that was another big jump for me. That was a big race. And while that wasn't the only component, that was definitely one of the elements that helped me to improve as an athlete, was that consistency. So I do enjoy it. I can actually get to work if I'm really trying. I can and I bet you, with your speed right now, you could probably definitely beat the car. But I could get to work.
Especially with Nashville traffic.
Yeah. Yeah. So I could get to work faster by running than I could by driving my Jeep, and like parking and then walking a block from the parking area to because we're a downtown school.
Okay.
So it's really interesting. I just love it. Like, I mean, I really, I've actually I don't take a shower when I get to school. I just change into fresh clothes. I have like a closet, and I've had all kinds of people in the classroom, from the superintendent to like the mayor, members of Congress. All those people come in. No one's ever saying anything like, Harvey, you smell. Like, no, because you just, it's like being in New York City, and or you're out dancing, whatever. I mean, it's like, I love the run commute. It's I don't see myself ever not doing that now, as long as it's not like I'm 20 miles each way or something like that.
Yeah. I'll be honest. Like, there's a lot of times I run in the morning.
Yeah.
And I don't shower after I run. And my wife's like, what are you doing? There's days where I'm drenched in sweat.
Right.
But the day's busy, the day's moving, and I kind of just forget about it and throw some clothes on, put some deodorant on, and I'm good to go.
Right.
And no one's ever told me I smell either. People might not just be lying to me, but I'm someone who I know I'll shower at the end of the day.
Exactly.
And I'm going to probably sweat at another point in that day. So I'll just skip that morning shower and carry on.
Right.
If it's raining or snowing, do you still run? Or
oh yeah. Yeah.
It's non-negotiable.
Yeah. It's a non-negotiable, which actually makes it's kind of wild. I find that if I'm off from school, it might be harder for me to get out the door than for sure it's harder than if I'm like, I have my normal school day. So my normal school day, my mind is already like pre-committed to, it's like catching a bus. I know I have to leave the house by a certain time or I'm going to be late. So I'm always on time because I know there's no way I have to leave at that time or I have to run really fast.
Yeah.
But it's quite amazing. It just definitely like just the health benefits of it. I mean, doing that regular 3 miles morning, afternoon doesn't sound like a lot, but it builds up on itself. It's like investing.
Compounding, consistency.
Yeah.
So you just carry a backpack with all your stuff for the day?
I just carry a backpack. I don't every night take my laptop home. I do probably like 2/3 of the nights. So I'll throw my laptop in there. I have a change of like nice clothing I'll put in. And I have like all my other stuff, like my food I put in the bottom. I might put that inside a Kroger bag just so it doesn't like get out on everything else. But it's sometimes I will carry this giant backpack that looks like a backpack like for doing like a week-long trip on the Appalachian Trail. And that's if I'm like bringing extra food into class or something like that. And I'll just throw all this. And it looks like, what are you doing running down the road with all this stuff, like lugging it like you're like going up Kilimanjaro or something. But it's really, it gets to be very easy. It's like my mind is committed. When I'm off from work, that's more difficult. Like if I'm off from work, maybe for like it might be I'm like doing other things. I procrastinate. I'm like, especially maybe if I haven't trained my mind and it's like rainy and like 35 degrees. I'm like, I'll wait till like 11 and then it's 12 and I'm like, oh shoot, I have to get outside. It's like that thought process. But with the run commute, there's no thought process to it. It's just like automatic. Like I don't debate myself. It's already pre-committed. So I'm just, no matter what the condition is, if it's 3 feet of snow, I will be the one teacher there. Like there's nothing that will stop me. Like I will make it before the cars make it. In like really difficult conditions because I've got other equipment. So it doesn't bother me. Like rain, all the other things.
I mean, that's the power of routine.
Yeah.
Like I wake up and I have my same routine every morning. Wake up at 5, drink my coffee, get ready for my run. By 6, I'm out the door running. And if I have nothing to do that day, I'll still run in the morning. My wife asks me like, Nick, you got nothing going on today. Like it's a Saturday. We're not doing anything. Run later in the day. I'm like, no, like, that is part of my routine. I have my best runs at 6 a.m. Mm-hmm. I don't enjoy running in the afternoon. I like when it's morning, it's dark. Like that is just, it makes it so easy for me because I don't even think about it. So some of these bigger efforts that you're training for,
right?
Say this Big's Backyard Ultra or Barkley, for example. How do you get the mileage you need in a week right. on top of those commuting runs to and from work? Are you extending those runs in the afternoon? Or are you just accumulating a bunch of miles on the weekend?
Most weeks, I run 3 times a day. So I run oftentimes in the morning, then I run in the afternoon, and I get everything home. and then I go back out and I go running further. So that's why I'm really
You're just running all the time.
I'm just running all the time. And then on the weekends, I like go out. I like to run in the morning as well. I'll go run like for maybe it depends on the race, like what I'm training for. Barkley is different. Barkley requires a whole lot of time because you're moving slow. So for example, like we could go out and just have like a nice little chilled 20-mile run and be all finished in 3 hours. And that was no problem on the road. But when you're going and doing a Barkley race, like more than half that race happens off trail in steep, crazy terrain like you exposed to in Georgia with the ranger training. It's so cool that you have to like spend a lot of time going and doing power hiking up stupid, steep, crazy stuff and like running down stuff that no one would ever think they would want to do something like that. And so that takes a lot more time. So doing Barkley, I might be out for like 5 or 6 hours on a Saturday or maybe like the Sunday too, just because you need that time to cover like the territory. It takes a lot longer, like to do maybe 20 miles, that could take 6 hours just because of the terrain is crazy. So I do find like, it depends on what's going on with life. I will wake up earlier if I have to in the morning. But I try to like, just fit it all in. And in the weekends are my long runs usually.
What's like an average distance for a long run or time?
Well, I'd use races for training too. So that can vary. Like I did a 60K race like a month before Big's backyard. It was like 37 miles. And that was like a mixed road, mostly trail race. And that race was like 4 hours and some time. But, the amount of, it could be, it varies. Like for, it just varies quite a bit. It depends on a lot. I'm trying to always simulate the race I'm doing. So whatever the race is, if it's I'm training for Badwater, Badwater happens on the road and it's a lot of mountains. So I'll do like, maybe I'll shift my training to doing like more 75, 80% road. Or if I'm training for like Western States, for example, which I'm going to be doing for my first time ever in June.
I saw that.
I'm really excited about that. So for that race,
I'll be out there. I'll be pacing for a leg of that race. Sally McRae.
No way.
Yeah.
You're going to pace Sally.
Yeah, I'm going to pace Sally for a little bit.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, I'm so psyched for it.
That's so cool. So we will definitely be seeing each other then. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, Sally and I know each other well. We've done a bunch of races with Badwater and man, that's so great. You're going to be crewing for her.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
That's so cool.
I knew she wanted to do Western States, and then she told me a few weeks ago, she's prepping for it. She's putting all this work in.
Yeah.
She asked if I want to pace her. I was like, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So I'll see you there.
Wow. That's great. That's really cool.
Yeah. So you opened up the can of worms for Barkley.
Yeah.
We got to go into some Barkley stuff now. I was first introduced to the Barkley Marathons, probably like most people, through Gary Robbins' film titled Where Dreams Go to Die.
Right.
And I remember I've probably watched this documentary on YouTube dozens of times. And I was training for my first Ironman. And I remember being on a treadmill on my honeymoon in Cabo with my wife. And I had a 14-mile run for that morning. So I'm knocking out on the treadmill. I have my phone on the treadmill and I'm watching this documentary called Where Dreams Go to Die.
Right.
And it got me so jacked up and excited. And I was so curious, interested, and intrigued by the Barkley Marathons.
Yeah.
Can you give a high-level overview what the Barkley Marathon is? Because I think it started in 1986. Am I correct?
Yeah, you got good, right? That's right.
There's only been 17 people.
That's absolutely right.
Who have finished this race.
Right.
Why is this thing so mysterious and such a beast?
This race is as iconic as can imagine. It is a very like secretive-ish, like cult, like classic type of event. I mean, like there's this following that's thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people know about this race across the globe now. From that film, as well as the one that's also free. It's like what is it called? I forget the one that came out first in like 2013. I'll come back to it, but it's Laz. He had this dream of creating this race. He first went out there to the Frozen Head State Park, and the park rangers like thought it wasn't even possible to do this 20-mile perimeter trail back then because it wasn't like maintained even like it is today. And the race has just evolved over time. So the race is primarily, it gets to be maybe about 120 miles. And you basically are covering about 66,000 feet of climbing. So it's about 2 times of Mount Everest, up and down. And you have to find the books that are hidden in the woods. So there's like maybe 12 to 14 books. And Laz is classic, like just a character of a race director. He just got inducted into the Ultra Running Hall of Fame this last couple weeks. But he basically gives you a rudimentary map that you have to copy onto your own map. And you have to follow his cryptic directions, which are very difficult to break down if you're not really familiar with the landscape. So it's very difficult because it's often like they never tell you what the exact date is. It's a secret. But it happens in March to the beginning of April. And it's usually really wet that time of year. But even like about 3 years ago, they had a variation of like 78 degrees down to like 20 degrees in like a matter of 24 hours. So it's like they get crazy rain, usually most years. You get rain and like fog, but you're navigating in the dark, off trail. Like you have to go like more than half of this race happens off trail. And you have to find these books who are hidden in the woods. And there's only 40 runners. So typically maybe half the runners are from overseas or more. And people get lost off track. And very rarely does someone finish. It's like a finishing rate of less than 1%. And in fact, this last year we had 3 runners finish, which was, we had a drought of like 6 years of no finishers. So anytime someone finishes the race, Laz goes back to the drawings, which change every year by like maybe 10 or 15%, to just keep everyone guessing where the route's going to be. But he makes the course more difficult. So the course now is much more difficult than it was even in 2010 or in 2000. It continues to get tougher. And like he pushes the precipice of what is humanly possible. So it's like dangling a carrot. Like it seems maybe it's not possible to do, but like, well, if all things went just absolutely perfectly, maybe it would be like the Indiana Jones film where you just slide underneath that door just as the door is slamming. And you somehow, luckily, you made it, you finished the race. But I should take luck out because it's nothing to do with luck. I mean, a lot of it has to do with just the amount of like focus, building your focus, your knowledge of the course and learning how to navigate in the dark, in the rain. I think maybe you would like it. Being a ranger. I've
always been
curious.
Yeah,
I mean, I think you may enjoy that sort of adventure.
When I had Courtney on the podcast, we went to dinner the night before and we were talking about it. And she's like, if you want to do it, we'll make it happen. I was like, I gotta be fully prepared. I've been watching you prepare for Barkley, and which I want to talk about.
Yeah.
But that race just is so interesting. You can't wear a GPS watch, correct?
Right.
And it's all compass and map. And even the way that you have to apply and enter the race is super mysterious.
Right.
It's like all these different things you got to do. And then in those books that are located on the course, you have to pull the page corresponding with your bib number to show Laz that you found the book and completed the lap.
Yeah.
What happened the last time you did Barkley? Like, how far did you get? What happened?
Yeah.
Where did it fall apart at?
So the first year I did it, Courtney and I, we made it about 1.5 loops. And I actually teamed up with Courtney on loop number 2. And we got turned around in the cold rain, about 33 degrees, just pouring rain. We didn't bring enough like rain equipment and warmer clothes, because once we're looking for like a book, we couldn't find the book, and we're spending a lot of time just not moving. So you get really chilled fast. So that was the first year. Like, we made it 1.5 loops. And then last year I went back and I learned a lot. I made some mistakes. But I was very happy because I did my own navigation, and I pulled, like we call people who do this race for the first time, virgins versus veterans. And so I had a couple of virgins with me that were trailing off of me. And it was kind of exciting because my first year I followed a guy from New Zealand who was a world champion of Rogaine, like venture racing. This man was incredible. Greg Hamilton. He could like find a dot like 2 miles away off course without even like in a perfect tangent, running down steep mountain terrain, holding a map and a compass while he's moving. And I'm trying my best to keep up with him. And he's running down the mountain looking like this. I mean,
was he military?
No, he was not. But he just, it's pretty funny because like the next day it was cold rain and he's just running around with like a shirt on, a t-shirt. I'm like, the heat really got him though. I could tell the heat would get him if it was really, really hot. Like, he was affected by like 68 degrees. Like, oh, it's hot. I'm like, but I'm seeing him operate in the cold. And I'm like, wow, you're amazing.
Just different blood.
Different. It's what he's conditioned to living in New Zealand. Like, they don't have the, it's what he's conditioned himself to. But like the last year, I missed the second loop, finishing it by 10 minutes, which in that course where you're talking about, you get up to 12 hours per lap. Like, that's a matter of like inches. It's so close. So I got really close to finishing the second loop. And if I had done that, then I would have had, you get 40 hours for the fun run, which is the third loop. I wouldn't have been able to go on to the fifth loop, but I would have had a really good shot of hitting like the fun run. So, I didn't bring enough food with me on the second loop was one mistake. And
how long do these loops take you?
Well, the first year I did it took me 8 hours and 37 minutes and we were moving fast. The second year I tried to pace myself and move a little slower so I would be able to do 5 loops if I could pull that off. And I did the loop in like 10 hours and 30 minutes. And I felt like that was a little too slow. Like, I should have moved faster. Because then I was up against the rope. Like, I had to make that night, because it was a daytime I did that. So moving at night is slower. And I had like 13 and a half hours to make that nighttime loop. And so it's really interesting. Like, Laz starts the race with a Kong shell. He actually starts, lets you know you have an hour to get ready with a Kong shell. And then he starts the race with a cigarette, which seems so totally counterintuitive to like the normal, right? I was
mind blown.
Right. Is Laz. But this last year I also carried too much extra clothing. Like, I had my backpack. It's because the year prior to this, I like was out there without enough stuff. And I was like, well, if it's going to be cold, we had these certain like forecasts, which I wasn't really sure. And like, it was not supposed to rain. And like the day of or before the race started, it wasn't supposed to rain. We saw like sleet and rain. I'm like, I could just picture myself. I didn't want to have to like tap out because I had this cold rain that like inundated me and I couldn't finish the lap. Mm-hmm. So I made some mistakes in terms of like, I think I carried too much equipment and I should have went lighter on the first lap. And then I didn't bring enough calories. I ran out of my food by like definitely like 2/3 away or a little over half away into that second loop, which once you don't have the nutrition, you don't have the energy, like you're a zombie. Like, it's like you feel like you're in molasses. You're not like moving like your normal self.
Right.
It's so important.
So what makes this race so hard? I'm sure there's a lot of components to it, but is it the actual physical beating that you're getting from the terrain, the elevation, the distance, the time on feet? Or is it the fact that you don't know where the course is and you're trying to find the route? Or is it a combination of both?
It's kind of a combination of different things. But like John Kelly, he finished it last year and his second time finishing it. And he's also a local to the area. So he grew up there. So for him, I don't think it's as much of a challenge in terms of like the navigation as for me. Like that, the navigation creates some anxiety for me because normally I can go to a race and I just know, well, if I give 100% effort, like I'm just going to stay into the mix. Like I'm going to be with it. And I really have to be careful of mistakes like, with nutrition or pacing. But with this race, I can't just focus on like my pacing, my nutrition, like those are just, and what I'm wearing out there, because that matters too. I have to really be conscious because I might be out there for hours and hours by myself and not see another human being. So I have to, there's no, a lot of times the bumper, like the bumper guards are not so clear. I mean, it's nice if you have a creek on the right side and you can't cross the creek, but other times if you go past something, it's not like you can pull your phone up and look at like, oh, where am I? It's like if it's dark and it's like last time when I was out there, we got a little turnaround and literally it was so amazing, but I saw this concrete pipe like in the middle of nowhere and I recognized it from like before, like the other race, the other year I had done it, I recognized that little in the middle of the giant woods, this concrete pipe that helped me to realize where I was exactly relative to the next book, which is crazy because it's like sometimes they're little. So that's one of the things I love about the Barkley is because I far from mastered it. So it pushes me in terms of skill level to be using my mind as well as my body, and you have to be super alert. If I'm doing bad water, I could absolutely put my mind somewhere else. Like I can almost close my eyes and run down the road, and even if I tripped on something, it would be no big deal at all. Like I fall down, no problem. I just get back up. But with Barkley, there's so many rocks underneath the like leaves. So if you step wrong, like you could really, Jared Campbell twisted his ankle getting to the first book a few years back, and he's finished a race before. So he was out of it. Like by the time he hit that first book, and you have to be so conscientious all the time of what you're doing. And there are even some drop off points too. I mean, so if you're like not being smart about what you're doing, you could really for me, I feel like I could seriously hurt myself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, other people may feel like John Wayne or something out there, they just go, but like for me, I feel like I really have to be conscientious of where I'm placing my feet. And like, I'm still falling. Like I'm like running down the hill faster than I normally ever. I mean, it's definitely faster than any other time I run. Even in training, I don't run as fast going downhill off trail as I actually do during the Barkley race, which doesn't seem right. But it's like, I just let go of like inhibitions. And like, there's something about being in a moment of a race where I'm just like, okay, yippee-ki-yay, let's go. And it's just like, boom, going down these steep mountains, running down, falling, running, getting up, falling, running.
It is so interesting, this race.
Yeah.
And as you're describing this, my palms are sweating thinking about the intimidation of this experience, because as you described it, any other race, you can almost go into autopilot. You can shut off. And like you said, your mind can go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And you can almost detach from the effort itself and the pain, because it's just let my body do the work and my mind can go somewhere else. With this, though, you have to stay so sharp. And you can see, and I can understand why it gets so challenging with each additional lap, because your mind is getting less sharp. Things are getting fuzzier. You're getting tired. You're fatigued. You're probably hallucinating at some point. You're trying to put out this massive effort, but you're also trying to navigate. And as I'm thinking about just navigating at night, in the day, at least you can probably terrain associate and you can pinpoint where you're at based off of the terrain features on the map and then that you're surrounded by. At night, though, it's dark and you don't see anything. So you're really just going based off of, I guess, compass, feel, pace. Like, are you keeping pace count as you're running?
There are a lot of runners that do that. I'm not good at that. So I haven't mastered that yet.
Yeah,
no. So it's the runners who are the most successful in this race, they know the course well enough that they don't have to check their maps very often or their compass bearings very frequently, as frequently. But even like I made a mistake coming on the second loop when I had another runner with me, Piotr, and basically I was kind of overconfident. Every time I've been overconfident, I've made mistakes. Like that's been an issue. Like, so I thought I had it in terms of like our direction, but at nighttime it's tricky because like I thought I had it. And then we ended up like about a quarter mile off target, like near on the other side of the prison. And then at that moment, then you're reorienting, and it's difficult because you're like you said, it's nighttime, and you're looking, and it's like, well, that shouldn't be there. And then you're trying to figure out like this creek shouldn't be over here. Why is that? Why is that? Well, yeah, and you get turned around. So yeah, it is absolutely a really exciting race, and the runners who come are like gladiators. Like many of them have been dreaming of this race for some of them as much as a decade or 5 years. Even like if you could see like secrets, but like even like the wait lists of like that goes like 45 deep. Like there were some of the best runners in America like on that wait list last year, like that weren't in the race.
Right.
So it's like there's people that come from overseas. I don't know them, but they're remarkable runners. And that's kind of a cool thing too. Like you have a big Barkley following in France and Belgium and like in all over the world. There's like, when I was down in Australia, like there were people really interested in backyard ultra, but I also had a couple people like chat to me about Barkley and how they were really intrigued by that race. So it's really quite exciting, like the whole aura down there.
What are you changing to your training right now in preparation for Barkley compared to what you've done historically? Yeah,
it's funny because I find like a lot of the runners, they seem very secretive about their training for Barkley, but for me, I don't mind about being sort of transparent because I actually feel like it helps all of us to help each other in the race. And like sometimes you have veterans that will try to like scalp, or like they'll try to scrape rather like virgins off of them. So if they don't want to like have the person running with them because they don't want to do the work for them they'll try to do that. But with my training, I've off trail, like that's where I need to invest more time, is running off trail, because it's like counterintuitive. You moving slower. And so going off trail, more hills, more climbing, like those are giant elements. Before little things too. Like, I mean, even before bigs, I started doing cold showers every day. I don't do anything but cold showers and hot baths. So I did that for a month up to bigs, and I like continue that. So, I mean, I feel like conditioning your mind to being not like to love every temperature. So, I mean, I have to really tell myself that I love the cold rain in 33 degrees. Like that's beautiful. I hope it's cold rain 33 degrees because that's probably what we're going to have in terms of odds. So I feel like there's so much of a mental aspect running at nighttime. So I'm running more at nighttime in the woods, because that's also something I don't necessarily like say, I may want to get up in the morning and like, maybe I say like, oh, I like running in the daylight, it's kind of nice. But I have to like reorient my mind. So I like running as much at nighttime as I do in the daytime. And like throughout the year, my mind will shift on these areas that fit into the race I'm doing. So when I'm getting ready for Badwater, for example, then I'm like doing all these additional heat elements and like telling my body and myself how much I love being in the heat. But like with Barkley, I can't say that. I have to like shift my mind away from the Badwater personality of myself and like say, because I do love the heat, but I gotta say the chance of it being warm in Barkley is like not so great. You know, it might be like 78 or 80 degrees. I have to really tell my, condition my mind to believing that like with 20 degrees, 30 degrees, including rain, and I'm like wet. Like I listened to your book on Audible, and you were talking about how you were out there and you guys started like singing in the dark
in
like,
the mountains of Georgia.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Yeah, and that's like that. So much is a shifting of your mindset. So then it became easier for you guys to go through hell by you just taking it and going head on with that mind. So that's what I try to do. I really try, and I have a lot of work ahead of me. So I'm just at the beginning phases, and I don't have a lot of time. It always feels like when I get to this race, it's going to be there before tomorrow. It seems like it's coming fast.
That's how it is for any of my races I do too.
Yeah.
I'm like, say 10, 12 weeks out and I'm thinking, I'm ready. Like I just wanted to be here. Then you're a week out and you're thinking, I need more time. I kind of want to shift that whole thought process because I am so interested in the way that your mind works and navigates these races. So Laz, being this crazy character who created the Barkley Marathons, also hosts Big's Backyard Ultra. And you just set the world record in 2023, a few weeks ago, at Big's Backyard Ultra of 450 miles. That's 4.5 days of running. It was 108 laps.
Yeah.
108 laps. When did you find this whole concept of last man standing races? And what did you think the greatest potential looked like then compared to what it is now?
Man, that was, I go back to like, it was in 2016. I think I vaguely heard about this Big's Backyard. And I thought, man, that sounded kind of interesting. Like how that works, that you basically do 4.167 miles every hour. And it rotates between the trail in the day and the road at night. And every day you'll cover 100 miles. So I was doing a lot of 24-hour races at that time. And I was doing Badwater. But I actually put it up to a vote, being the government teacher. And I had it on social media. I was like, to people who were following me, I said, I had that race. I had like a 6-day race. And a race in Oman that was like a stage race, and some other race. I don't remember the other one it was. And overwhelmingly, like 80% of people voted for me to go do Bigs. So that was my first, like, okay, I'm gonna go out. In 2017, I went and did it. And going into the race, it was so, because I've seen the evolution of the race from 2017 to 2023. And it was very just laid back. Like, I mean, there were people there that were going to run their first half marathon, which was really amazing. Like, I showed up the night of the before. I got there, I was taught that day, drove the 4.5 hours down to Laz's, or 5 hours, and I slept in my Jeep. I got there about midnight. I didn't have my crew. My buddy Judd was going to come later on the next day, around 1. And it just was, it was a Laz just brought a whole nother dimension to it because he's a bit like a poet. I mean, he elevates the races that he organizes. It's like an art form for him. He finds a way to create these races which bring out the greatest in people, to push beyond their very capacity of what they think is imaginable. And the exciting thing about, Bigs is that is a race with no finish. So you have no idea how far it might actually go to. But back then the record was like 200 miles. So when we hit 200 miles, and it was myself and Guillaume, a French runner, and I think a lot of people didn't think I would do as well as I did because they had associated me as being like only a road runner and they didn't realize I like to run on trail and road. And so I just remember Guillaume, like I'm thinking, okay, it's 204 miles. We got the record. Now I wonder how far this guy's going to want to go, because I thought maybe he'll just want to go a couple more laps and then we keep going. And then it's like, well, geez, I didn't take that many days off work. I got to get back to work like the next, pretty soon here. And and I started thinking like, well, geez, if we get to 300 miles, because some people there were starting to talk about, well, maybe this will go to 300 miles. And that's not ever happened before. And I thought like, geez, if we get to 300 miles, I don't know if I'm going to quit. Is he going to quit? And so it just becomes that psychological game. And ultimately, I was the assist in that year. I went 241 miles, and then I bowed out to Guillaume, and he finished and won the race. But it was electrifying in terms of like the amount of followers. Like I had never done a race where it had like more and more people started jumping on to watching what was happening as the race continued. I didn't even know like that would happen. But we had like got past like 150 miles, and then it was almost a whole day that Guillaume and I were the only ones in the race. Like everyone else had dropped out. And like I was getting like the people there were like, oh yeah, there's people in different places and countries are following what's going on. And, everyone's excited about what's happening here. And it was, so after the race happened, there was also just a giant interest in like the race. And I think that also intrigued like Courtney and Maggie, and they actually decided to come out to the race, I think the following year, after seeing like, our experience in the race that year. And so like, Courtney coming, she has like a giant following. It's like, so big. And that even brought more interest into the race, because people are like, and then in 2019, Maggie won the race outright. So it's phenomenal. I mean, you see like a woman beat all the men and was the champion. Like that was just an amazing thing. Showing like, the further you're going in distance, it becomes more of a mental aspect than a physical aspect. And like, so the whole race just was something that I like the strategic elements to it, but I also like the element of pushing myself and discovering like what is possible.
And then in 2021, you won. You set the record, 85 laps, 354 miles. Going into that year, did you know you were going to go over, or were you prepared and ready to go over 300 miles?
Well, we had never hit 300 on the course, and I thought it was possible because, but I didn't know like how far it would go. I never know how far the race will go, but at that moment in time, I committed myself to like saying. Always prior to that, I had like given up because I psychologically gave up. Like I mentally said, okay, I can't go further. But really I had never physically given up. Like I had not gotten out there and been timed out because I couldn't make it back. I had made the choice in my mind, even though I maybe didn't think it was a choice. I made the choice in my mind and said, okay, I think I'm done. I can't, I said in my mind, I said, I can't go out and back. But I didn't actually go out on the course and then failed to make it back. It was like I gave up mentally versus giving up physically. So that's 2021. I shifted that, and I said, okay, I don't want to give up again because if I don't make it, okay, but I don't want to not make it because I mentally say that I'm done. If I'm not going to make it, I want it to be because I physically cannot make it to finish that lap.
Right.
That's why that was one of my shifts.
So I heard you say before that these races are 70% mental, 30% physical. Do you still believe that?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Like, I mean, I don't have exact figures in terms of that, but it's somewhere in that range. Yeah, it's a range. Yeah. There's a range there, but where it 100% it originates in your mind. And like, even my buddy, Greg Armstrong and I, we were talking today, and he's talking about, he's a really competitive runner, ultra runner, and he's run like over 150 miles in 24 hours. And he said like, he hasn't run a race in 2 years with ultras, and he's planning to do one in February. And he's like, so much of it is like regaining the confidence and like the mental aspect, because just as your physical body can like atrophy, like your mind can also atrophy in terms of like, you have to construct your mind to being able to do these things as much as your body. So it's 100% like a major like mind aspect to this in terms of training too. Like, cause you have to get yourself, motivated and disciplined to get out there, do all the work to prepare your body so you can withstand it. That takes the mind as well. But once you get out there, like there's a million reasons you could come up with where you could say, okay, I'm done, if you're going to let yourself do that. Like, you can always find a reason to quit in the mind, and you have to find your why of why you won't do that. Unless you're like, having blood in your urine, or you have like a injury that you could like develop a long-term injury from, those are things for me. Like if it's not something like that, like I'm not going to ever quit a race because I'm going to be the last person. If I have to be the last person, I'll be the last person. I would rather finish last in a race than to quit the race because I'm not going to be in the top 3 or the top 10 or whatever that might be, because it's just the way I look at it. For me, I feel like more driven to finish the race. It's just my mindset towards it.
Yeah, I know how powerful the mind can be. And I always talk about setting the conditions in terms of like your training and your environment and your physical preparation. But I also believe and trust and know that you have to set the conditions mentally going into something as well. I think back to like, I'll use this past marathon, for example. From the time I get on a plane and head to wherever that race is at, my mind is a completely different place and a completely different thing than it is the weeks leading up to. I am so hyper-focused. The morning of the race, it is like the most dialed it can be. And as we're moving into the corral, like at CIM, moving into the corral, there's a lot of people who are taking photos and they're having conversations about where they ate dinner that night or why they're not going to run the best race in their life. You can overhear all these conversations. Well, this happened in my life, so I didn't have the best training program. So I'm just going to go out there and like, put out a good effort. I toe that line and my head is just dialed in, and I'm ignoring like everyone and anything around me, because I know that over the next, what I wanted to be, less than 2 hours and 45 minutes, I had to be so physically and mentally intentional with every mile of that race. And I know if I'm not in the right mindset, that it all falls apart. None of the physical preparation matters because I didn't set the conditions mentally to get there. And I know that when I physically prepare and plan, and I put myself in a position to execute, and my mind is right, game over. It's so powerful. I really want to understand where your mind goes when it gets really, really hard. And where is that? Like in that 450-mile race, at what point did you start thinking to yourself, this is actually getting tough? And where did your mind go?
Yeah. So honestly, there are a lot of points where that happens, and it's like your flow of thought can diverge into two different ways. So it's like, if you let your flow of thought continue down the rabbit hole the negative way, like you're going to self-destruct. So like I'm always trying to rechannel my flow of thought into a direction that is with the frequency of where I'm headed with the race. So where it was really, I remember even like the second night, I was feeling tired, like in the second night, which is so crazy. Like that wasn't even halfway through the race and I was feeling tired. And I would never say I'm tired, but like I would tell like my crew member, I said like, I'm just feeling kind of tired. I'm not going to quit, but I'm feeling kind of tired. And so just finding it depends on what degree of like risk you're at. Like if I'm at a risk of like failing, not failing, but like just crashing and getting knocked out, then I'm going to be managing that differently than if I'm like just 6 hours from like possibly crashing the ship. So what I mean by that is like if I'm in a moment where it's like I'm really pushed up against the wall, then I'm thinking of like motivation for just the next loop. And that might be as simple as like I'm going to like what the food is the next lap. Like that seems crazy, but I'm motivated by food. I love food. So
I did the same thing. When I did Last Man Standing in Maine, I was doing the same thing. I was thinking about what I was going to eat.
Food. Yeah. And I'd love to hear more about like that experience too for you. But honestly, like it's also, it can be who you surround yourself with. So like Yellow Runner, like getting you for the team in Western States, that's a huge deal because she knows she can predict what you're going to be like. You're going to have a positive, like attitude. You're not going to say anything negative. You're going to be willing to help any way you can. Like it's predictable. And like, that's also really important. Like my crew chief, Judd, he is quite amazing. He's able to like, he's just really clever. He's able, we actually met in a race in Morocco back in 2016. He had never done any marathons in his life, and he was on a plane. He saw this Marathon des Sables race, and he's like, oh, I want to do that. He does like bike racing, all these other types of crazy things. And he did one marathon to get ready, and then he jumped into that 160-mile journey across the Sahara Desert. But when he's there crewing for me, I could say, I told him I'm in a difficult spot, and he's like, Harvey, you just keep on running back and forth. You're going to run these people down. Just keep on running back and forth. It's and then the 2021, he's like, I told him on like, I think it was the around 100, it was around that same point, somewhere that second night, I said I was having difficulty. He's like, just imagine you're running to work. He's like, those nighttime loops, you're going out and back, running to work. And when he said that, for some reason, it worked for me. It clicked, and I was able to like turn on that auto mode where I get up in the morning and I just go out and I run to work and back. So having a very strong person as your crew can also really be huge in the overall equation. But
on a note of that,
yeah,
one of the things that Chad Wright told me one time that I will never forget, he said, your tongue is your rudder. And as soon as you say something, it comes out of your mouth. If you don't have someone to self-correct that for you, that rudder will take you right to where you don't want to go.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it here because it's going to probably make it tougher for me in the races in the future, at Bigs. But there were a lot of other runners where I heard them say negative things. And I'm like, if you say something negative, like, you're done. Like, I already know you're done. So, I mean, like there was runners that were on the fourth day, I heard them complaining about having to, go up there's some places where you have to make bigger steps up on hills. And I heard them complaining about that. I'm just like, that's just fuel to my fire. Like, I'm like, it's like that. Yeah. If you're complaining,
you can feel and hear the weakness.
Yeah. If you're complaining, that's like I don't ever complain. Like if I do, no, I don't ever complain. Like if I say something, I may say it to my crew member, but even then it's not in a complaint format. It's just like, something I'm dealing with, but it's, complaining. I think it really, it's that channeling your flow of conscious, and like you could take it down that rabbit hole that's going to take you to a dark place, or you can like rechannel it to somewhere positive. So when you're dealing with that, like difficult, you just like make it about, well, like this is exciting. Each of these steps is one more step further than I've ever done before. You just shift like what you're saying, or you make up a mantra. You're like, I will go, something simple, whatever it is. Like I'm strong, whatever. Just you repeat that, you reprogram your mind to believing it, and then you be it. So it is the biggest race is really something exciting because it makes you push yourself to that very limits.
How many times did you have to reshift that flow to something positive over the course of 450 miles?
I got to a point where I probably did that like unconsciously, like but I'm sure I had to do it. I'm sure like there probably would, imagine almost every lap, there was probably something that stuck in my mind where I was like, for example, I really struggled with sleep. Like the night before the race this year was unprecedented. I only got 3 hours of sleep. And it was one of those times where my mind was just so active and thinking about everything, and I couldn't calm down my mind, which is like not like me. I've had like 3 other times in my life experience of running where I had that bad of a sleep the night before a race. And like going into like the biggest race experience of my life, getting 3 hours of sleep is like crazy, So then in the race, the first 3 days, I wasn't able to fall asleep at all. Like I just laid there with my eyes shut. And when I did my last backyard in Australia, I made it to like 375 miles. And when I finally tapped out, I actually had the most vivid hallucinations of my life. Like the grass there became grass people, and the trees came alive. It was, my hearing became super acute, and I would like fall asleep for a second and wake up like this. And it was, there was nobody around. It felt like I had just entered like Stranger Things, like the underground world. It was really weird. All the colors were slightly like accented, and that was probably due to my lack of sleep. So the fact that I went to like, I didn't even start sleeping until the 4th night, like, and I didn't have any hallucinations this time, which was crazy. Like I
didn't sleep until the 4th night.
The 4th night was the first time I slept, and I was doing 55-minute laps. So I would sleep for like 1 or 2 minutes. But at that point, it was golden. Like the 4th night, I got to a place where I could like, we found a frequency like the 3rd night into the 4th night that I felt like I could just do forever. Was something really special. I was running with this guy, John, who's from Wisconsin. And like, we just kind of teamed up, and we also helped some other runners who were in the back. And we were just like skating by 55, 55, 55, but we were very consistent. And I would think that that's like not the best formula for running on the road. Like you're not getting any sleep mostly, but 1 or 2 minutes by the 4th night, that 1 or 2 minutes sleep was like golden. I was like, I would wake up, and I felt like, I mean, I still was tired, but it was like, wow, I felt like I slept for 8 hours or something. My orientation was just off. Like I convinced myself that it was a long sleep.
I've heard about these 1-minute naps that
it was
ultrarunners talk
I
about.
never had that experience like that before. That was like unbelievable. So then even in the 5th day, I was able to do that. Like I did a couple of times where I just went and lay down for like literally a minute, just like a minute. And even my buddy Judd would time it, and they'd come get me a minute. That's all I had really time for. So I was trying to like use all my time very precisely, cooling my body with ice, in that 5th day, consuming as much calories as possible, laying down for like 60 seconds. Everything was a matter of seconds, and if I miscalculated even one lap, I would be done. So it was risky. I feel like if I ever did have those significant hallucinations like I did in Australia, I feel like I could run through that maybe. I've never tried running through that type of hallucinations.
Sounds very difficult.
A little difficult. But the fact that I went for basically the whole first 3 days and I didn't sleep is amazing, that I didn't also have much in terms of hallucinating. You know what I mean? The fourth night, I was definitely like, I would start to like fall asleep while I was running, and I'd catch myself. I'd fall asleep I fell asleep probably several times just for like a second, and I'd wake up as I'm running, like just catch myself and trip a little. Yeah, it was, I didn't know that was possible.
That's such an incredible performance and outcome.
It was wild. It was so wild. I had no idea. 450
miles, 4.5 days. I mean, where do you think this concept and style of race can go? What is there a limit? Like where's going to go next?
Yeah, it's Laz has made it creative. So like every other year we have like on even or odd number years we have the individual world championship, and then on even number years we have a team championship. So with the team championship, you have 15 members on your team, and you actually compete on your home course in your home country. So in 2024, we'll probably have like 50 different countries competing, all with 15 runners. And so there seems to be no limit to possibilities with this race because you have so many different things occurring. You know, you have people are able to enter the race if they're going for 100 miles. In fact, what's wild, this last year, more people did 100 miles in under 24 hours in the backyard format than all other 100 milers combined across the world. There's like actually over 400 backyard ultras now in 73 countries. So it's definitely going to be possible to continue to break through the barriers. And yeah, I definitely don't see this record like staying more than like at the maximum, like 12 months, you know, maybe less than that. Yeah, I really think. But the funny thing is like, I love the most about this is that like just our sense of what is possible. And like Laz and I we had a conversation about the team element, because I see Biggs is a tougher course than many of the other race courses that happen in other countries, because it has about 450 feet of climbing each trail loop, and it has rocks and roots. And there are some courses in the world that are like a golf course and it's flat. So I'm like, it's not really even for our team of 15 to be competing against another country of 15 that's competing on a flat terrain that has no rocks or roots. And Laz is just like, well, you're just gonna have to be better. And so going into 2022, we had the team competition. And at that one, I was assist to Piotr. And we made it to like 312 miles and I tapped out. And I really feel like I didn't believe it was possible to run the furthest record on that course when you had all the other runners in these easier courses. I had like mentally, like I didn't give my full capacity, I think, in a way, because I felt like it was an unfair advantage to other teams and like it was an unfair playing field. But doing the race this year and like discovering that we got the world record on a tough course, it kind of changed my thinking. You know, like it is possible to go further even on that tougher course. Like, and one of the big elements to it is the competition. So like we had 22 runners that made it to 300 miles. We had 6 runners that made it to 400 miles. And then Ihor was amazing young man, runner from Canada. He made it to my assist, and then I pushed to the 450. So, I mean, had we not had that incredible competition, I believe it's the most runners who have ever reached like 300 and plus miles in North America, even when you take into like 6-day races and that type of thing. Like there was just amazing runners there, really good competition. So that really good competition helped to fuel us to go to like these extra laps. Like if I would do it individually, I wouldn't be able to do the same thing. I don't feel like with having the runners, everyone, it's like a total equation. And the total equation is impacted as much by how many people drop out early. If those runners that drop out earlier stay in longer, it actually helps the final runner make it even further, which is an interesting mathematical equation. But if you look at these backyard ultras, that's the way it works. The further that every person makes it, the further the final person will make it.
It's a very interesting correlation.
It is.
Isn't it absolutely amazing how impactful people around us can be for our own personal success and growth? Say, for example, you came in on one of those laps and you go over to Judd and you say, I'm feeling tired. And he goes, well, Harvey, you got this far. Like, I'll be really proud of you if you go one more or just stop right now. And you hear that and you think, oh, well, I guess it is okay to stop. Or you have people in your life who are encouraging or accepting your decision to quit, stop, fail, give up on something. But works in both ways, where you have people in your circle, in your life, who are encouraging you to keep pushing forward, keep trying, keep failing, like keep working towards that win. It has such a monumental effect on us personally and professionally. And I always talk about this, and I think about this, just auditing who's in your corner, who's in your life, and how they're impacting your ability to push forward and achieve the goals that you set out to accomplish. I was thinking about that as you're talking about Judd, and he doesn't care how tired you are. It's, well, keep running, Harvey. Keep going.
100%. I mean, it is like night and day. Like to have that's why I'm very careful about who I select for my teams when I'm for crews and my A races. But Judd he's just he has that magic. He's able to keep it positive, keep it lighthearted, joke around, and also to say the things that he knows will electrify me, in terms of that. And even with a team, like I love building teams. Like I ran the 24-hour USA team, and we did things. My first year was in 2010, and I had another Mike is actually a ranger who's on that team, and he ended up winning the race. But it was like the teamwork dynamic between all 6 men and all 6 women. Like that was the first time we actually got a medal as a team. It was in 2010 in the 24-hour race. And like there were so many elements to what happened before the race, as well as what transpired during the race. And there were things that didn't go right. Like there were curveballs and challenges, but like it's so important in terms of like how you build the group dynamics.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, like, what did you think about that main race? Did you like that backyard? What's your plan after this marathon?
I'll be honest, I didn't have many plans for a lot of races in 2024, but after this conversation, I'm now itching.
Yeah.
Itching for a race. Because
I would love to see you as one of the 15 runners on the USA team and Laz's property come October 2024.
Yeah.
You will have to do a qualifying race. So like a real well-known one is in Capitol. It's like near DC. That happens, I think, like around May, end of May.
And that's just you see how far you can go in 24 hours.
No. This is for the backyard ultra.
Okay.
So you will have to either win the race, or like get beyond a certain mileage. So I don't know what that mileage is now. It might be like 240 miles or something like that, to be at the at-large list. But basically, to get the 15 members for the backyard team, you basically have some races which are like winning ticket races, like Ohio Backyard Ultra. That's one of them. So if you win that race, but also you can be at the at-large list by qualifying with the most miles of other runners in the country. And you have to be in the top 15. So we won the gold in 2022. And there's some other really phenomenal teams like Belgium, Australia. There's a lot of competition, but it's a really cool dynamic when you're on this team, because what happens differently in the even number years is I'm not running for myself as much as I'm running for our team. So like I'm constantly thinking about what everyone is doing. And if I see someone doing something, like maybe I'm noticing like they're not they're not having any sun protection on and it's really hot. And I'm like, you probably should put an ice bandana on or something. I will say that to them. Versus like in the race this year, I may say something maybe, but probably not. I'm probably not going to want to say anything to anyone else because they're doing their own program. I don't want to mess with them. They maybe have their own program, but in the team dynamic, we run together a lot of times. We're pushing our individual self, but we're also pushing the team. And it's a cool experience. It's quite fun. So if you're looking for something unique and different in 2024, as well as people like listening to this, I'd definitely say go for it. I mean, it's pretty cool to represent your country in a race. It's a lot of fun. We want to have more women in the race. We have Jennifer Russo's phenomenal. She's run over 300 miles and she's 58 years young.
Oh, wow.
I mean, is that just phenomenal? She has a world record for women. And it's like, but we need to, we had, Maggie, we had, Courtney's been doing a lot of the trail races. So she's, maybe she'll just, I know she loves the backyard. Maybe she'll come back and do it too. But, we'd love to get more women involved, more women on the team. But I would love to have you as one of the 15 members. I mean, it's a really powerful journey you go through. And it's not just a physical buildup, but like also the mental, barriers you push through in that experience. Mm-hmm. And like just a camaraderie amongst the team it's a good camaraderie.
Yeah. I loved the last man standing concept and the way it was so unique and different. It was definitely a little intimidating as I went in because I didn't know where the finish was. And going into that race, it definitely wasn't my A race because I knew as soon as I finished that last man, I had to go next week into prep for the sub 245 marathon. So like CIM was my A race for the year. Right. So like, leading into that, I really didn't want to crush myself. But talking about just like that whole team dynamic, that is something I really lean into and I get a lot from. In this past marathon, I was probably at mile 13, 14, maybe even before that. And I could hear people chanting "Going More" and BPN all across the race. And I experienced this thing. I always have these, what I call unlocks in any race that I do. Like in last man standing, I had this unlock where the meaning of "Going More" evolved for me, where it was no longer just an action, but it was actually an outcome. And I'm writing a whole book on just like this concept that Going More has evolved over the last couple of years for me and its meaning and how to actually implement it and see it through. But I had this unlock during CIM where, I started that race running it for myself in this personal goal. And I get to mile 12, 13, 14. I hear all these people chanting "Going More" and BPN. And, when I run, especially when I'm putting out a bigger effort, there's just these emotions that flow that I can't really control. And I'll get choked up on runs sometimes and my mind just goes certain places. And I start thinking about all these people who showed up to support the brand and how Going More and the meaning behind it has changed and impacted their life. And I thought at this mile marker, you know what? I'm not running this race for me and a personal goal. I'm running this race for all the people who believe in the process and believe in Going More and believe in what I'm setting out to achieve. I'm not running this for me. I'm running this for everyone else. Like I have the responsibility and obligation to cross the finish line below 2 hours and 45 minutes because I said that I would, because I have a responsibility and obligation to show people what happens when you put in the work. And that mindset shift put me in a whole new headspace where I was able to hold, 6:05 miles the whole way through after that. And the last 3 miles were the hardest miles of the race, but I just got stronger and stronger and stronger because I was thinking I'm running this for a team. I'm not running this for myself anymore. So there's that responsibility you get from that is so powerful.
Yeah.
That can make such a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like hitting higher levels in terms of like that's the highest level you can hit is when you start to experience something like that where you're running not just for yourself, but you're running for a greater purpose or greater cause. That's something special.
It's incredible.
Yeah, that's really neat.
Well, Harvey, I really appreciate you sharing your stories and everything you're doing in the running community. The energy, there's this quote that I came across a few weeks ago and I've been obsessed with it since I came across it. And it's that raw enthusiasm is contagious. And you have this raw enthusiasm around what you're doing. And I can feel it and I can see it from the classroom to running to your travel and the experience, the impact you're having on people and in the world. And it's contagious. I mean, I've caught the raw enthusiasm from here now, and I'm itching now for an ultra. So I'm going to go home and convince my wife that I'm running an ultra in 2024.
I love it.
But I really appreciate you making the trip here, coming on the podcast. And again, huge congratulations for setting a world record of an amazing effort.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I feel like we should go running.
Seriously.
I know.
Seriously.
Like, let's go.
Well, Harvey, man, I appreciate you. And
cheers. Thanks so much. It's been a blast.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.
I really appreciate it.